ABF Kronoberg presents Vital Knowledge, an early interventions for asylum seekers project. The series is financed by the County Board of Kronoberg County and produced by ABF Kronoberg. The fourth episode is called Violence in Close Relationships. With us today we have Katarina and Kerstin from the women's shelter Märta. Who are you? My name is Katarina and I work at the women's shelter Märta in Ljungby. And my name is Kerstin and I also work at the women's shelter Märta. What is a women's shelter? A women's shelter is an association, what you call a non-profit association, that has no profit-making purpose. But we work to help women who are exposed to violence and their children. What support can you get? We try to provide the support that the woman herself wants. Sometimes it can be difficult to know when there are a lot of things you have to deal with when leaving a violent relationship, so we can give some advice on what might be best to start with. It could be that you have to start by blocking your bank card if the man has access to your money. It could be about getting a pet to safety. We have support talks with women, of course, where they get the opportunity to tell what they've been exposed to and understand how things could have turned out the way it did. We have a lot of contacts with the authorities. There are many contacts you have to have when you want to leave a violent relationship, and we can help identify the contacts you need to have and in what order. It can be about social services, police, the Swedish Social Insurance Agency, courts, lawyers, healthcare, psychiatry. So there are a lot of people who can get involved. And then we help to guide a little in this jungle of authorities. And we also accompany you physically to the police, to social services, whatever you need. And then we can help in an emergency situation. You can get some clothes if you're left in a hurry and have nothing with you. What counts as violence in a close relationship? The violence is much more than physical violence, blows and bruises and so on. It is also psychological violence, financial violence, sexual violence, a lack of care that someone doesn't take care of their family in a good way could be a form of violence. Even pets can be subjected to violence because the abuser knows that the person has a lot of feelings for this pet, and then he directs the violence there instead. What is physical violence? Hitting, kicking, pulling hair, shoving, being held down. It can be a lot of different things. Most of the time, the perpetrator wants the bruises to not be seen and make sure to pinch or hit places that are easy to cover with clothes. There are also a lot of women who think it's embarrassing to show up with bruises, and the perpetrator knows that very well. What is psychological violence? It could be that you're called various ugly things, that you're stupid, that you're a bad mother, fat, cook bad food, and all these negative things you hear that do a lot to your self-esteem, and you lose faith in yourself. And in the end you think that you're as bad as he says you are. And it can also be different forms of threats that may not always be carried out, but you never know. It could be that he will do what he threatened to do, and then you live in this constant fear of what might happen. What is financial violence? It is when you're not allowed to manage your own money, and that you cannot go and buy what you want, the food you want. You cannot, for example, decide which menstrual protection you want to buy, because it is the man who controls all purchases, everything. And then you are trapped and very attached to this person who controls your money. And it can also happen that you are forced or tricked into signing contracts or loans. Sometimes even the man forges the woman's signature to force her to sign documents on loans that she herself doesn't want to take but is forced to do so. What is sexual violence? It can be anything from rape to what is referred to as nagging sex, actually trying to persuade someone to do something against their will. Pushing, threatening, in order to make someone sexually willing to do something that the person actually has no desire to do. What is lack of care? For example, it could be that he doesn't look after the family's needs, and if he controlled the money, the family might not get the food they like. But he says, now we're buying this and I'm the one who decides what you can eat or you cannot. It could be that the children don't have whole or clean clothes because he doesn't buy detergent. Or simply, he just doesn't buy clothes so that the children get what they need. It may be that someone with a disability does not get the help that that person needs. It can be not helping them take their clothes on and off, personal hygiene, medicine, food, or hiding the remote control when you leave home, hiding the cell phone, for example. And that you do things deliberately so that the person with a disability will injure themselves. If you are visually impaired, the perpetrator can move the furniture so that you will trip and hit yourself. So there are many ways like this to make life more difficult for your partner. What warning signs are there? It could be that the man has a bad view of women, and he often expresses himself disparagingly about women, that they are bad in different ways, both women in general and towards the woman he lives with, perhaps in particular. And it may be that you don't get to keep company with whoever you want. You feel that you are being controlled, who you can talk to, how you can look, how you can behave. And it may also be that the rules change. You try to do the right thing so as not to make him unhappy or make him use violence, but you can never do the right thing because he comes up with new rules after the fact. And when you feel very alone and isolated, when it has gone quite far into the relationship, and then it can be harder to get out. So it's important to try to be aware that he might call a couple of times a day, initially to say that he loves you, but in the end you feel like it's to check on you. Why is it taking you so long? What have you been doing? Who have you met? Why did it take so long to go to the shops? All of these things that make it so you have to be watchful all the time and feel stressed and nervous. What can you do if you are the victim of violence in a close relationship? Talk to someone you trust, or contact a women's shelter and we will help you along. And that you should absolutely not feel that you're alone in this world. There are so many women who are abused all the time. But the important thing is that you don't try to carry this yourself. In conversations with a woman, it is important that she learns that this can happen to any woman. It is not a particular group or a particular background or a particular origin, but any woman can be victimized. And it is difficult to know in advance which man may become an abuser. I also think that it's important to know that if you report that you're being abused, social services will not take the children away from you. And this is a very common threat that abusers makes precisely to prevent a woman from leaving the home with the children, because that's the last thing you want, to lose custody of your children. But that's not how it works. What can I do if I suspect that someone else is being abused in a close relationship? The most important thing is that you dare to ask. Ask the question, and the worst that can happen is that you get a no. But in the long run, it may be the person who asked the question is the person the woman finally dares to turn to and tell how it really is. And that as a neighbor, if you hear something, you call the police. Don't just close your eyes and ears to it. But if you hear something from your neighbor, take it seriously and call. How do I get in touch with a women's shelter? Just call or email. We at Kvinnojouren Märta are available during office hours, and as a rule, it is quite quick to come here and meet us physically if you would like to do so. Then we have also non-profit women who answer the phone after office hours, in the evenings and on weekends. So we are very easy to contact. And it is also important not to hesitate to turn to a women's shelter. You might think that you must be beaten with a lot of bruises and injuries, but that's not the case at all. The whole situation you live in can affect you psychologically a lot. No problem is too small. All you have to do is get in touch. You can find your nearest women's shelter at roks.se. You have watched the series Vital Knowledge, an early intervention for asylum seekers project, financed by the County Administrative Board of Kronoberg and produced by ABF Kronoberg.